Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2020 show. We are still at the Grand King Race Shop. Thanks to Bill Throckmorton and his wife Stephanie who allow us to come in here. And we highly recommend when the isolation is over, stop by here. If you're a race fan, you want to come to this place. They're located at 8155 Crawfordsville Road. Today's show is presented by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT IndyCar Series, SVRA, and McGilvery's Pub and Eatery in Speedway, which incidentally opened Friday for meals on the deck. Founded in 1993 to spearhead Honda's entry into IndyCar racing, Honda Performance Development has overseen the successful racing efforts at all levels of the sport, from karting and quarter midgets to IndyCar and prototype sports cars. HPD offers race engines and competition products for professional, amateur, and entry-level racers. For more information about HPD and the company's racing product lines, please visit hpd.honda.com. I got to mention a couple of things. I got to thank Speedway Community Television for helping us with technical support in the editing of this programs. I want to also mention, if for those of you that are as good with a computer as I am and you have a problem with it, we got a new computer guy. It's an A+ affordable computer doctor, Steve Freeze. Call him, find out what he's got. And he is a doctor, like the old days of my time, makes house calls. So give him a call, 317-328-0766. When it comes time for your next dental appointment, there's only one place to go, and that's the Indy Dental Group. Indy 500 veteran Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have the best practice in the state of Indiana. So call and make an appointment. I guarantee you'll love it. Number is 317-846-6125. And if you'd like to take a corporate group, or take your son or daughter and see if they are capable of driving, I recommend the Anderson Race Park in Palmetto, Florida. They've got a 1-mile track and they've got everything you need to train. They got parts, they got the equipment, whatever you need, they have it. So check it out, the Anderson Race Park, Palmetto, Florida. And if you've ever wondered, why do these guys and gals like driving Indy cars, go to the IndyRacingExperience.com and schedule yourself with a ride. Take a ride in their 2-seater. You'll see the excitement and the thrill of what it's like to run. And believe it or not, the car runs very fast. So if you're interested, go to IndyRacingExperience.com, find a date that works for you, and in the promo box, put DK1, you get 50% discount. Or you can call the office, talk to Shonda. The number is 317-243-7171. It's getting time to renew your home, your car, or your commercial property insurance. Do what most of us have done. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. He can take care of it for you, and when he sells you insurance, he stays with you. He doesn't say, here, don't call me, call him. He will help you, and you'll find you get better coverage for less money. Number is 317-248-0070, and he's located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. That's Mike Pardee at VP Insurance, 317-248-0070. And should you be a vintage fan or a Trans Am fan, you can go to svra.com and subscribe to Speed Tour Magazine. Quality magazine, great stories, great photos, and you'll find a lot of the cars that you used to see as a kid, they're running. And some of the drivers that drove them, they're driving. So check it out, svra.com, Speed Tour, subscribe. And while you're there, look at the schedule. It just came out, there's been some changes, as in everything these days, and see what's going on. And if you're interested in a vintage car, they have a couple here at the Grand King shops, or if you have one, you need it restored, they can do that for you too. Give them a call, tell them what you got or what you're looking for. Number is 317-820-3595. And incidentally, if you want to come down here and visit, call ahead and let them know you're coming. 317-820-3595. Joining me today is the IndyCar Series Vice President of Promoter and Media Relations. We're going to discuss the 2020 IndyCar schedule along with the NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader, international races, and the NBC Sports Television, how things are going. Thanks for joining us, Stephen. And I got to think now that you are slammed with changes coming up almost daily.
Yeah, it's a really busy time for us here. You'll see that you've seen that we've just recently, distributed our I think it's our third schedule now, as we're constantly addressing and adapting to changes. So we're really working hard to try to make sure we understand what's going on as a result of the pandemic in each of the markets we race. We're constantly adjusting the schedule to try to make it as accurate and as updated as we can. And when we have news, Obviously, we released that to the public, but just trying to make sure that we are constantly communicating with our promoters, making sure that we're making the adjustments that are necessary to the schedule on a regular basis, constant communication, and then also making sure we're communicating with our media partner, NBC. There's just a lot of moving pieces, and we're trying to handle them the best we can.
I got to think NBC would have a programming problem, so you got to coordinate certainly with them because you want to be on television, televise the events.
Absolutely.
And I just got a copy of the revised schedule, and I was really sorry to see. We knew Toronto was canceled, but I don't know, is it canceled or are they trying to reschedule, or is it off for the year?
Yeah, we announced that it's off for the year. Obviously, anything can happen, but right now, we don't plan on being in Toronto in 2020. And as you said, it is unfortunate. Obviously, that's a wonderful market for us. It puts us in Canada. It's a wonderful street race that we've had for consistently and consecutively many, many, many years. And so it's a big event and one of the crown jewels of our schedule. And so, of course, we're sad to see it go for this season. As it relates to the scheduling, we just have to be flexible and understand that we're facing some challenges that we've never seen before. So, under the circumstances, I think we've done a pretty remarkable job, at least at this point, kind of maintaining a pretty full schedule for the rest of the season. But of course, there were some casualties, and we don't want to see any of those, but it's just the reality of what we're facing today.
I know the sad thing that hit me when I saw this yesterday is Richmond is gone in. You probably have never been there. I was to all the races they had there. That's a spectacular market and a great race, really good race.
Yeah, again, another casualty of this pandemic. Obviously, we were really, really excited to be back at Richmond for the first time in a long time. Our fans were very excited about it. We were looking forward to putting on a great show in Richmond and breaking back into the Mid-Atlantic region. But again, that's one of the events that we had to do away with, given what we're facing as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. And, all we can say is that obviously we're sorry, but we're doing the best we can, trying to figure out where we can be. And at the same time, making sure that we always keep safety and the health of our participants and fans as a top priority. It just resulted in the schedule that we recently released being what it is. And so we'll continue to work, and we look forward to being in Richmond next year. But for now, it won't be on the schedule.
The next race in a couple of weeks is down at Texas Motor Speedway, which is a fabulous facility and great racing, but it's going to be without spectators. Are there any of the following events going to have the same situation when they come to Indianapolis for road race number 1? Will there be fans in the stands?
We hope so. We sure hope so. Obviously, we have to always protect the people, though, right? We have to continue to make sure that our fans and participants are kept safe and healthy, and we don't want to do anything to put anyone at risk. And so we made the decision to start June 6th at Texas Motor Speedway without spectators, and we'll continue to evaluate it. That's one of the things, Don, that's kept me busy, continuing to figure out what's happening in the local markets and what the local authorities and officials are saying about what can be done in the various race markets. And as we do that, obviously after Texas, based on the schedule we released yesterday, you see that the next event up on deck is, the event here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And so obviously we know well what's going on here, and we'll continue to have those conversations, pay attention to what changes are being made at the government level, and do whatever we can to have the best event we can, but always keeping health and safety as a priority. So that's the long-winded way of saying to you, I sure hope so. But it's a day-to-day thing that we're constantly evaluating, and anything can change any minute.
And I trust that NBC has been very cooperative, and you work with them. With somebody, if a promoter says we can run in this weekend, you want to get clearance from NBC, I assume, first to make sure it can be sent out live.
Yeah, we have to do many things at the same time. So while we're communicating with our promoters and trying to assess what can be done in the local race markets, we're continuously having regular communication with NBC as it relates to what television windows and opportunities we have on their platforms to distribute our product here in the States. So obviously, there are a lot of plates spinning, and it takes a lot to build a schedule the first time when you have months and months to do it, but to constantly have to evaluate the challenges in race markets and then think about what can be done in terms of shifts that we might have to make on this current schedule, along with communication to make sure that any changes we make don't result in weekends that can't be televised. And remember, NBC's dealing with this not just for IndyCar, but they've got to deal with it as it relates to PGA, NHL, and a host of other properties. And so, I sometimes have to remind myself that as busy as we all are here, there are a lot of folks like those at NBC that are dealing with, a broader amount of events, and they have to, be attentive to all of those properties. And they've done a tremendous job so far in accommodating our needs while respecting the needs of their other properties. And I just take my hat off to them.
Now, somebody called me a couple of days ago and said, I just heard something. I said, really, what did you hear? He said, I got a story from someone that tells me that when NASCAR comes to town at some point in time, they're going to run 2 road races, one direction counterclockwise and the other one clockwise. Anything to that one? I started laughing when I heard that one.
Well, we're always communicating with NASCAR. Sometimes you hear things that are true about what we can do at IMS and what we can do together with IndyCar. And then other times you hear things that are a little far-fetched. And then sometimes things that started out as far-fetched become a reality. So I'll leave it to the folks at IMS to tell you what might happen as it relates to events at the Brickyard. But I can tell you that that one seems interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Now, I know Mark has mentioned a number of times that he wants to take the series overseas into, out of the United States, make an international event. Is that still on the calendar, or is that put off for another year at least?
Listen, I think we will continue both, internationally outside of North America and within the U.S. Listen to great opportunities that are presented to us and continue to evaluate the tracks or the host cities we want to take the NTT IndyCar Series to. But I can tell you that right now our priority is to be great at what we do already, and to continue to promote the premier open wheel race series in North America. And so that's our focus. It doesn't mean that we'll never go outside of North America. It just means for now, we're going to focus on continuing to be good at what we do, and that is to be, primarily based in the U.S. and Canada. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity within North America, and we'll continue to vet those and see. But I'll never say never as it relates to, flyaway events. Those are interesting to consider. We've had, a lot of opportunity and just decided that it didn't make sense. And I would say it's a little bit on the back burner right now, given all that we're dealing with, but I would never say never. I would just say that you probably won't hear us talking about that as much in the near future as we have in the past, because our priorities have shifted in respect to that.
Well, 2 things I want to mention. One is, I think when you look at IndyCar and what they do and the competitors and the competition they have and what it takes to win the title, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, IndyCar is without a doubt the greatest series in the world and the champion of this series, because you have to run street courses, road courses, big ovals, small ovals. You got to run it all, and you got to master it all in order to win. And there's no other series in the world that does that.
Right. No, I agree with you. We're very, very proud of the diversity of our circuits and our participants. We're very, very excited about some of the new up and comers and the way that our series is growing. I think you're right. And from a talent perspective, we really, really boast how skilled the driver you have to be competitive in IndyCar. And I think that more and more fans every day are starting to realize that. And so it's an exciting time to be a part of the sport. And we'll continue to brag about how talented our pilots are compared to other series, at the same time respecting that every series is different. And so there's no question in our minds that you have to be multidisciplined in order to be successful in our sport, and we're proud of it.
And the other thing that has been catching people's attention is there's 22, 23 teams now, and any one of 10 or 12 can win a race at any given weekend. And in fact, I'm sitting in a shop where they're working to put together a brand new IndyCar team, which may or may not happen this year, but so that the interest is there to grow the series. There are teams that are wanting to get in because the competition's fabulous and it's really fun to watch. And
I agree with you. As someone that didn't grow up a diehard motorsports fan, I've become a fan. And I think the things you just mentioned are largely responsible for that. This was going to be just an exciting 2020 on a variety of fronts, including the new teams and participants. And it was just shaping up to be one heck of a year. And I think it still will be once we get on track. But obviously, because everyone's priorities are likely in order, I think that we've all been focused on, health and safety and making sure we can return to racing in the best possible way for everyone. And so, but I still think you're up for an exciting season once we do get back on track. And I think that the things that you've mentioned about how interesting and exciting our sport will be on full display once we get back on track.
And the other thing, I just had Dan Anderson on a few days back, and what he's done with that program and the number of drivers that have gone through the ladder system of the Road to Indy program and now are in IndyCars is astounding. And some of the drivers that have come from Europe, like Marcus Ericsson and Felix Rehnquist, have said there's nothing in the world like the Road to Indy program and how great it is and how well it's talked about outside the country.
Yeah, I think the thing that a lot of fans and drivers have in common are that once they get a taste of IndyCar, they're hooked. And I think that includes the ladder series. And I can speak for myself when I say that I really, really enjoy watching our races. I think they're very exciting. And I can imagine that if I had the courage and audacity to try to get, into a car to drive, assuming we could find one that would fit me, I think that I would be obviously really, really interested in continuing to develop in this sport, because there really, in my mind, is nothing quite like it.
Well, the reason he said the car he could fit in, he's a former basketball player, outstanding basketball player, and he's not 5'7". So to get a car that would take his height would be a little difficult. Now, I mentioned to you when I called about doing this, that I read an article by our local columnist, sports columnist, Greg Doyle. And while reading it, he mentioned an attorney he spoke to at NCAA. And I read over it and I caught, but I didn't really think about it. Then he mentioned, after saying that, her husband works at IndyCar. And I remember you mentioning that your wife is also an attorney, as you are, and she works for NCAA. Yep. And she's got to be on her toes and running full speed, I would think, at this time as well.
Yeah, first, I really enjoyed that article by Greg Doyle. I thought he did a good job of kind of capturing the things that she's dealing with and the NCAA are facing on a day-to-day basis. I've always tried to surround myself with people that are much smarter than me, and choosing a wife was no exception. She's the star of this house, so I'm glad that she got a little exposure on that. But yeah, I think that all sports properties are really dealing with a lot. It's funny. One of the things among many that this pandemic has revealed is that sport is really, really important to our culture. It really inspires hope and, gives a lot of color to some of the difficulties we have to face every day. I think the stories are told well through sport, and I think it's a really important thing across the world globally, but particularly in the U.S. And so I think that, a lot of attention, I would say in the early stages of the pandemic, in some respects, the story of COVID-19 was being told through what was happening in the sports world. And I just thought that was, unfortunate in terms of having to experience the pandemic for our world generally. But I thought it was very fascinating to see that the updates, not just ESPN and the sports channels, But when you looked at CNN and the news channels, I think that you were seeing that among the top storylines was what was happening in terms of the closures of venues and the cancellation or postponements of major sporting events. And I think that it just reminded me just, how important sport is. And so obviously when you talk about sport, you think collegiate athletics if you live in the US, and that means NCAA. And, they were among the first to make some decisions about their postseason tournaments and the NCAA tournament. So, my hat's off to them for all that they did early and kind of helped lead the way. I think that, all of us have been working together, all the way up to the White House. Mr. Penske, it's been public, has been, in communication with all of the other commissioners and leaders of sport, trying to figure out, how we can get back on track, per se, and just make sure that we're doing it in the safest possible way. So, sports is a big deal all the time, but I think you're seeing its importance play out in the midst of this pandemic.
I think the interesting thing, to your point of how important sports is, some of the games and things that they're replaying on television now because they don't have live sport is amazing. I mean, they're pulling out games that were 10, 15 years ago. In fact, I saw one last night where the game where Emmett Smith broke the rushing record. And so it is important.
Yeah.
And the world does revolve around a lot of sport. It takes you away from your job, give you something else to think about. Entertainment, family get together and watch games on television, or they go. Right. So it is important, and hopefully the NCAA, which hurt Indianapolis, not only NCAA, but Indianapolis with the tournament games coming here and all the fans that come to town. This town is perfect for conventions, for sporting events, because everything is downtown. You don't have to get on a bus and go 50 miles to see something. It's all here. So it hurt the city great in the state greatly, no doubt.
Agreed.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think I've taken enough of your time. I think that hopefully that the last schedule that was released yesterday holds, and as everybody does. And I appreciate all the efforts that you're going through to coordinate everything with the promoters and get the facilities and the health officials and television to get everything to work so that the fans can watch and be a part of it and enjoy it as they have for many, many years.
Well, we can't wait to get back to action and to hear from our fans about how we're doing, and to hopefully provide them with some of the most entertaining sports that you can find anywhere. So as it relates to IndyCar, we're thrilled to be going back to Texas Motor Speedway on June 6th. We're ready to go, and we're going to do it in the safest manner, and we look forward to it. And thanks, obviously, Don, for all your support and all you do. And it's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, thanks for taking the time, and get back to work and get things done, and give your wife my best and tell her I enjoyed the story about her and what she does. Interesting.
Thank you so much. I'll do it. Thank you.
My guest has been the Vice President of IndyCar for Promoter and Media Relations, Mr. Steven Starks. We will be back again. We have several more interviews lined up, but we're working with Zoom, and thanks to Ted Holland, it works. And the Speedway Community Television people who edit the performance of the interviews and put them on the internet at autosportradio.com, and it goes on Facebook and a number of places. So stay with us. We got more program coming up in the next few days, and we'll have it on next week. So until then, Don Kay saying thanks for watching. See ya.